Hi, everyone. Welcome to the call. Thank you for joining us on today's meeting, which is entitled Tips and Tricks for Running a Textiles Recycling Event. My name is Susie Whalen. I'm the Outreach and Communications Associate for the Product Stewardship Institute, or PSI. Now, PSI has been working with the Re-Clothe New York Coalition, the New York Product Stewardship Council, or NYPSC, NYSAR, NYSP2I, and others to increase textile recycling across New York for these past few months. We have some of New York's expert recycling coordinators here today to share their most creative tips and tricks for running a textiles recycling event, and we hope this will inspire you to consider running one this fall. But first, we're going to give a little background before we hear from them. So if you aren't familiar with the Re-Clothe New York Coalition, the coalition is a collaborative group of recyclers, nonprofits, and governments who are working together to increase textiles reuse and recycling across New York State. Now, you can see their website up at the top right corner if you'd like to check out more about them. But for the past few months, we have been running an outreach campaign with the Re-Clothe New York Coalition. It was launched on September 15th. It's a 10-week campaign that culminates on America Recycles Day on November 15th. And the purpose of the campaign is to encourage New York residents to donate and recycle their unwanted clothing rather than throwing it in the trash. Now, through this campaign, NYPSC and PSI helped the Re-Clothe New York Coalition create new and updated outreach materials that make it easy for all of you, as well as other organizations, associations, nonprofits, and community advocates around New York, to help the Re-Clothe New York Coalition spread the word about the benefits of textiles recycling. Now, these outreach materials are on the Re-Clothe New York website. There's an outreach toolkit and a media toolkit that contains sample social media posts, fact sheets, posters, flyers, media alerts, all with the goal of making promoting textile recycling as easy as copy and paste for all of you. Now, we'll go into more detail about these materials later on in the call. So I'd like to hand it over now to Dan Rain, who's the chair of the Re-Clothe New York Coalition and a recycling coordinator from the town of Bethlehem in New York, to talk a little bit about the purpose behind the Re-Clothe New York Coalition and the original campaign that they ran in 2014, which inspired our current campaign. Before I hand it over, though, I'd like to let you all know that you can ask questions as our speakers are presenting by using the Q&A box on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Always make sure to type in the question and select all panelists from that drop-down when you're doing that. So with that, I will hand it over to Dan. Dan?
Thank you very much. This is Dan Lucas Rain with the town of Bethlehem, as well as the Re-Clothe New York Campaign Coalition. As she mentioned, I'm just going to give a brief background about why the Re-Clothe New York effort was formed, and a little bit of history. Some of this will be review for those of you who've been involved since the beginning. As some of you probably know, the Re-Clothe effort was focusing on recovering textiles. Was our first statewide effort that targeted a specific category of recyclable material. We partnered with, the NYSAR 3 partnered with Secondary Materials and Recycled Textiles Trade Group, or otherwise known as SMART, and the Council for Textile Recycling, CTR, and the organizations partnered to form the Re-Clothe New York campaign. Why did we focus on textile recovery as opposed to other materials from the waste stream? First of all, textiles comprise at least 5% of the waste stream, sometimes as much as 7% or more in areas of New York City or other parts of the state. So it's an important component of the waste stream that really had been what some people call the forgotten recyclable. Everybody knows about paper and cardboard and fiber and plastic and metal as recyclables, but a lot of people don't think of clothing and other textiles as a recyclable material. A lot of folks thankfully know to donate their very wearable, in-season, fashionable clothing for others when they're done using it. But a lot of folks really didn't know when we started the campaign, especially, and in some cases still don't realize just how recyclable textiles are as a commodity, even if it is no longer wearable. Only about 15% of textiles by national estimates are being recovered from the waste stream. So that makes textiles a very low-hanging fruit, so to speak, as far as recovering more, that 85% that's being trashed right now. Other reasons we focused on textile recovery is that there's already a reverse supply chain existing in the United States. Unlike organics, such as food scraps, where a lot of cases the infrastructure has to be rebuilt in the modern age to be able to recycle those materials from the waste stream, we already have this system of bins and thrift stores and sheds and other ways that are really reaching all parts of the state where folks can tap into this network to donate their unwanted clothing and other textiles so that they can be recycled and reused. Also, there's significant economic and environmental impacts, which you'll see in some of the outreach materials that very powerfully presented, but I'm just going to briefly go over a couple of them. We're estimating that 1.4 billion pounds of textiles are discarded each year in New York State, and that has a potential economic value of at least $130 million. So we're talking about a lot of untapped revenue here. Also, the coalition has estimated that at least 1,000 new jobs would be created statewide in the reuse and recycling industries if all the textiles were recovered that are currently being trashed. So, and textiles, as opposed to other what you might call more traditional recyclables, have a greater environmental impact as well. For example, we're estimating that the greenhouse gas emissions impact for textiles is roughly equivalent, and this is just the 2 million tons of textiles that are currently being recycled in the United States, roughly equivalent to all yard waste recycling, glass recycling, and plastic recycling combined. And that's only with 15% of the textiles currently being recycled. So you can imagine if we were able to approach 100% of those materials being pulled out of the waste stream, what we might be able to accomplish. And then just really briefly, a little bit of the history of the Re-Clothe New York campaign. We started in 2013. There was a very powerful training that I attended and it was a moment of realization that myself and a lot of my colleagues throughout the state were unaware of just all of the wide range of textiles that could be reused and recycled. And not only were the recycling coordinators and educators unaware of it, but the residents throughout the state were largely unaware of it as well. Put together a presentation for the New York Solid Waste Association's recycling conference in the spring of that year. And then we quickly formed a working group and had a bunch of meetings and got together and had a, excuse me just a second. And then we had a very successful statewide stakeholders summit in April of 2014, where we got together stakeholders from throughout the textile recovery industry, municipal folks, public and private industries, educators, students, and everyone. I had over 50 participants and really got things organized and planned the campaign along with SMART and CTR. And then we kicked off the campaign in November 2014 at the NYSTAR conference, a state recycling conference. November 5th, we had a ribbon cutting, and then officially launched on America Recycles Day, November 15th, 2014. So that's, in a nutshell, a brief history of it and why we're focusing on textile recovery.
Thanks very much, Dan. That was a great overview. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You're quite welcome.
So now we're going to have PSI's Amanda Nicholson go over some of the Re-Clothe New York Coalition standards for coalition membership that were put together this summer. Amanda?
Thanks, Susie. First, I just want to note how really remarkable the effort and the achievements of the coalition have been to date, and that's really been thanks to NYSER and to Dan's efforts. After the first year campaign, the New York Coalition held another summit and recapped all of the successes and also identified some areas where there was room to build on the coalition, strengthen the coalition, and build the campaign further. And at that summit, really the need to strengthen the coalition, to decide on common messaging that everyone was going to use about the importance and impact of recycling textiles, to clearly convey that all textiles really can be donated and what happens to them, and to share data to really be able to calculate and demonstrate the impact that the campaign and the coalition was having, all really rose to the top as the most important items. And to do things like that, especially when you're looking to collaborate among competitors, you have to be able to build trust among those collaborators, especially when it comes to things like sharing data and being more transparent about what you're collecting and what you're doing with your textiles. So the New York Product Stewardship Council partnered with PSI and NYSER to apply for a grant for funding from the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute's Community Grant Program, which was awarded to strengthen the coalition and develop the messaging and the data sharing agreements that would make another year campaign worthwhile and allow us to improve upon it. So in the course of the spring of 2016 and the summer of 2016, PSI met with a working group of collectors, both for-profit and nonprofit, local governments, and NYSER and NYPSC and PSI to talk about really what those messages ought to be, what sort of data could be shared, and how to ensure that everyone who was joining the coalition was a good actor, that they were joining the coalition with the same goals in mind, and that they were going to be putting those textiles to the highest and best use, as well as being transparent and playing by the rules, you know, obeying the laws of where bins are placed and being sure that they were being respectful competitors while working together to increase the share of the pie that they could all get by increasing the amount of textiles that were being collected in the state. So after much deliberation, 4 calls, and many iterations of the standards, the group came to agreement on some specific terms that we use to build the campaign this year. One of those is to agree on common language about what's going to go on all of the new bins and sheds that everyone's putting out there. And this is where the messaging about what can actually be collected comes in. All clothing, shoes, and other textiles. The bins have to say all clothing, shoes, and other textiles. To definitely specify that nothing be left outside of the bins, because that's not legal and it creates a problem for trash and other issues. And then to, on their websites, provide a full list of materials that can be collected and that they do collect. And that includes everything from footwear, including things like cleats, to Halloween costumes and sheets and linens and backpacks and just all sorts of things, even underwear. You can even donate underwear. And also to really make note that they can be donated in any condition. They can be torn or worn or even stained, but as long as they're clean, dry, and odorless, they can be recycled. The other standard is data collection. This was really important for the group to be able to share the amount of material that is being collected over the course of the year so that we can make some determination of what impact the messaging has had on the amount of textiles being recovered, and we can tweak that messaging and find stuff that works the best, that reaches the most people. And that was definitely a hurdle worth overcoming. We also decided on clear messaging for the campaign. The primary message is that clothing and shoes are highly reusable, that all textiles can be recycled, and that there's an existing network across the state, and that this coalition is working together to make that happen. The second message is some of the statistics that Dan already mentioned to you, that recycling textiles could create 1,000 recycling jobs in New York State, that there could be $130 million worth of economic value created through textile recycling and recovery, and the really significant environmental benefits that reusing and recycling textiles have. And then lastly, the fact that New York residents are currently disposing of 1.4 billion pounds of textiles a year, and that just a small portion of that is being collected, and to make people just aware of that so that they can start to change their behaviors. So the last was really about transparency and making sure that all of the members of the coalition are putting their textiles to the highest and best use, and that if they're for-profit, they're labeled as for-profit, and if they're nonprofit, they're labeled as nonprofit. Now, after the coalition standards were developed, all of the organizations signed on. That process is still ongoing. But those messages and the data collection agreement allowed us to move forward with this year's campaign. And that's where we're at today. So back to you, Susie.
Thank you, Amanda. I know also that Andrew Radin is on this call, and he's the chair of the New York Product Stewardship Council. Andrew, is there anything you wanted to add to Dan or Amanda's presentations before we move on?
I don't specifically, other than to also acknowledge their efforts to make the campaign so successful. And one of the key ingredients that is, I think, achieving the objectives that we had originally envisioned for the campaign was this great collaborative effort of everybody working together. So it's great that we've got so many people on the call today, because their efforts to kind of plug into the campaign and implementing some of the suggestions that we're going to be talking about and that are also available on the website with the toolkit is really what enables us to achieve, I think, some of the high-level accomplishments that we're shooting for. So thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. So now I'd like to transition over to our next speakers. These are recycling coordinators from the state of New York who have had some great experience in running textile recycling events. We have Susan Attridge from the City of Buffalo Department of Public Works, Mary Bartlett, who's from Madison County Department of Solid Waste, and then we have Gary Carroll, who's from Erie County. So I'd like to start with Susan Attridge, and she'll give us some tips and tricks. What we want to know today mostly is, what are your most effective creative strategies for running a successful textile recycling event? And this is what our speakers are going to be addressing. So Susan, I'd like to start with you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for having me on your call today. I'm just going to give a brief overview of what we did out here in Western New York. In 2014 in May, we were starting to think about what we were going to do with textiles. Actually, it was a question that came into one of our city stats, our public forums, about recycling, and also we got a call or a contact by Goodwill asking us to help promote what they're doing. And so it was a good time. We had also been in discussions with Community Recycling. I don't know if people are familiar with them, and that kind of fell apart. And so after talking with Goodwill, we reached out to some of the other organizations, and we ended up forming this Western New York Coalition for Donated Goods. And our mission statement, really, this group was really based on non-for-profit, and that's not a judgment necessarily against for-profit, but that's really what we decided to focus on, and that was going to be part of our messaging, was that this was going to be with non-for-profit groups. So at any rate, we met. It took from May to August, which was a really short period of time to do everything that we ended up doing, which I'm going to go through with you in a minute, but to develop our mission statement, the identification for the group, the logo, and the messaging. And I say it was intense because it really was. It's a lot to do in a short period of time with a lot, and they were all marketing people who have great ideas, so anyway, we came up with those two themes just to drive textiles out of the trash and to local non-for-profits. And you can see on the bottom who our participants in the coalition are. Next, please. So this is just quickly going through what our mission statement was. I won't read it because I'm sure you can read it as I'm speaking. That was the logo that we came up with. We developed the web page, and the web page was really just to do a lot of what the NYSAR Re-Clothe is doing as well, which was to identify how to, where the location of drop-off sites were and how to access the non-for-profits that were actually participating in the Coalition for Donated Goods. Next slide, please. We came up with a textile fact sheet. I agree with what the other speakers said, that a lot of residents don't really understand why do I even need to do this? My stuff is dirty, it shouldn't be going in, it's not nice. And so that was like a really tough thing to climb. So we developed this textile fact sheet. And then finally we also developed a member fact sheet because there were a lot of questions about who's getting my stuff. People are very partial in certain cases about who gets what. Sometimes they're not, but sometimes they are. And in fact, don't want anybody making money off of their stuff. If they wanted someone to make money from it, they'd have a garage sale. So we thought this was a good way of getting the message out about who we are, why we're doing this together, and what positive impact we have on the community. Next slide, please. We also came up with this infographic, and again, this is dated. I mean, we did this a long time ago, but just so that when we went to all the different events, we would be able to get the message, the clear messaging out, which is donate. 85% is being thrown out because most people don't really believe that. They think, oh no, everybody's donating. No, they're not. They're actually, most of it's going into a landfill, and that's really the competition for this material. So next slide, please. The launch for was in August of 2014, and so the launch was actually a very large clothing drive, and this was our first clothing drive. It was all hands on deck. You can see all the people that were there for the launch. That's every single participant: Goodwill, Hearts for the Homeless, AMVETS, Buffalo City Mission, and Salvation Army. And at this point, St. Vincent de Paul wasn't involved, but we also had that banner made, and we had not only at the local the large mall we have here, we were there all week collecting clothes. We did it right at City Hall and right in downtown. And so it was a pretty successful event for us. It was probably the most clothing collected we got, which was about 2 tons. And next slide, please. So then we went into events galore. I mean, we have had so many events since the initial launch and continue to do so. And we've learned a lot from this process, which is what I'm going to share with you today. I think the November 14th, 2014, I think it was the next November that was actually the statewide event. I could be wrong about that, though. But at any rate, that was the America Recycles Day, Western New York, where forward. And that one we actually participated with the Buffalo Sabres. We had them on board, and they really advertised heavily for us. They had both this one and the other Buffalo Sabres we had on the Jumbotron. They did a little infographic for us on what we do, and it was a great opportunity to get our message out as to why it's important to recover clothing. It was not necessarily a great event to collect clothing, and after that event we realized that we were doing 2 things at these events. Number one was actually getting the material, but more importantly, in this case, it was to actually call attention to the problem and call attention to who we are. So even though we didn't get a lot of material at that event, we still found it was successful because we really got our message out. We got a lot of media coverage, and we also got a lot of money, and we didn't really want a lot of money. So we had to figure that out too, because it's much easier at a large event like that to just throw money and you know, they want to do something, but they can't bring their bag of clothes. So that was a learning, a takeaway from that. And then the next few events we did again at malls. One of the takeaways from that we learned was, and a later slide actually talks all about this, but I'll do it as I'm going along, was that the mall wants to work with a coalition of donated goods versus the individual non-for-profits, at least here it was that way. They don't like to be perceived, the management of the mall, as picking a particular non-for-profit. So if we went in as the coalition and we split up the goods, the material, and we were all represented, they were much more on board than they were before. In fact, we hadn't been able to make any headway in the mall, and none of the groups had individually, but as a coalition we were. And of course we have a lot of people here that come from Canada, and believe it or not, they come, they buy their clothes, and they were taking off the clothes so they didn't have to declare this stuff and when they go over the border. So this is actually a large problem. And there was a lot of clothes at the mall with garbage, so we've been trying to do, with clothing, so we've been trying to put a bin in there, and we were finally able to do that with this coalition. The May event that you see there in 2015 is highlighted in red because it was another one of our very successful events. This event, we actually had multiple partners, and we had multiple locations where people could drop off clothes, and we had advertising that was paid for by Erie County through their grants on the radio, and we basically had drop-off centers at Elmwood Village, at a park, at our engineering garage, at Rhinestein Woods, which is a New York State DEC facilities, 3 county libraries, and an outlet mall. And at the same time, we were promoting Earth Day in May, which is part of the DEC, and we had a contest with all the Buffalo schools. So we really threw a lot at this event, and we did get a lot of material, and particularly at the Bidwell Park, which I can't explain to you why it was that way. That's the Elmwood Village. But we did get a lot, and we think it was because we combined the textiles and the shredding, and that gave people, 2 reasons to go out, to take the time to load up their car and go out to an event. Secondly, the radio advertising really did have an impact, and it was also on the television news. So advertising really does have an impact on participation and material. And I think also giving people more than one reason to drop off things really had a big material. And then the last big event we had that we found to be very successful was the textile drive that we had for November for America Recycles Day, which was the Stuff the Truck event, and I believe that was at the same time as the state drive. Again, I could be wrong. It could be that November one. I'm sure Dan will help me with that when I'm off, when he's off mute. But at any rate, that one, again, we did at multiple events. We did it at the Buffalo Sabres, and it was really fun, and it was great, and was successful for all the same reasons the past one was, but we did not get a lot of material. The December 5th event at Hurdle Holidays. Hurdle Avenue is a strip it's a commercial strip in Buffalo, and they have a Christmas holiday shopping day, weekend, actually, I'm sorry. And we coordinated with them that we would have drop-off sites at every corner, and people could bring their clothing, recycle it, and then go shopping for new things. Great. I thought it was a great idea. I was really excited about it. We got nothing. I mean, I would say we filled maybe three of those smaller things that we had. And I just think we decided that the reason that one was not as successful was because we had too many drop-off locations on that street. People didn't know where we were. We had the bells, we had the Salvation Army bells, but still it didn't make sense. So that the takeaway we got from that event was, you really need to have one central location when you're doing an event like this. Working with the Hurdle business community was excellent, and that's something I would definitely encourage, working with the business, because they were so great about putting the signs on every one of the storefronts and promoting us any way that they could on their Facebook page, and that was a very positive event. So next slide, please. So this is just some of the outreach material that we had from all of these different events. The shirt one was one we used for the malls, and which I thought looked great. We had somebody kind of younger do that for us, and we really, again, we did good at the malls in that we were able to be there permanently. There's the Buffalo Sabres, good old Sabretooth, and then this was the Hurdle Holidays, and this was something else we did for the first time was we allowed the donors to receive the $5 off coupon at any of the member stores, which was innovative, and it was also popular. I mean, people liked doing that. And you can see also that we have a hashtag and all the things that you're supposed to have for social media. Next slide, please. Again, this is the different events we had. I don't know that I had this one up here, but the Celebrate Earth Day one, that was a really fun event. We did a little bit of everything. We had the Go Bike. That's a group here in Western New York that's actually been very instrumental in making us a bike-friendly city. And we just got so many bikes at this event. And again, I think it's that whole theme of having more than one thing going on. It is a lot of work, but I think people are more likely to participate. And that's how much clothing we got at that one event in that van back there. So that was a pretty good event for us. This particular event here was at the University of Buffalo. The two don't go together, and that was another good cooperative. I was working with the college. Next slide, please. We even participated in a fashion show that Salvation Army had. It was really fun, and it was great, and, it was just kind of we got a table, and, we had some information out there, and it was really nice to get the message of recycling in with reuse. Next slide, please. So again, what did we learn from all of this? The one thing, and a lot of this I've already said, but it isn't really about collecting material. It's about getting the message out that you need to not throw it out. And that was, in the beginning, I don't think we all saw that. I think what we were seeing more, particularly, from Gary Carroll, who's on the call with us today from Erie County, and myself, we were always about getting the stuff out of the landfill. The non-for-profit groups that we worked with were more about collecting the materials so that they could support their programming. So it was kind of a balance that we had to get to, and I think at the end we all did come up with that it's nice to get the material, but it's really about getting our message out. As you can imagine, having all of these organizations involved, it became really labor-intensive and too labor-intensive, frankly. And so what we decided to do, which I thought was a good way to adopt and a good takeaway, was in adopting one of the special events that the municipal people would organize the event, because we always had to have that so that there was a little bit of distance away from all of the member communities, but that each community could adopt a collection event. And at first I thought that was going to be very difficult, but it hasn't been. It's like, okay, I'll do this one. All right, I'll do this one. So that's worked out really well. But that said, not all the groups do participate evenly, and they're towards the end, as that was becoming more and more of a problem, was, well, what about this group? Are they going to do it this time? And so, that's just a work in progress. I don't have a good answer for you on that one. I told you about the money, that people do like to give money, and so you have to be prepared of how you're going to handle that. And that actually was a little hard, because nobody wants money unless it's for their organization. But to have it in a way like this was, where we took the money and bought a tablecloth and things like that, it's just an added job. So that's something that you should think about if you're going to form a coalition like this. And I think I already said this, that the community is particular about who they want to give to. But they are willing to give as long as they know that that group is represented. So they would give to us as long as they knew that somehow that group was part of it. Number 6 is, again, I already said that. So what I would say is I think the events are great. They're fun. They're really good to do, but, they are a lot of work, and the more you can work with other groups, the easier it is, and the more you get done as a recycling person. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. That was super helpful. It was great to go through all those events and hear your lessons learned from each, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I want to just see if Gary Carroll is on and see if he has anything to add. I'm not sure if his audio is working. Gary, are you there with us? All right, it doesn't seem like it. So we will go on. We will now move on to Mary Bartlett, who has a couple more tips and tricks to share with you. Mary, you there with us?
Yep.
Great.
Hello. Hi, everyone on the call. I'm Mary Bartlett. I'm the recycling coordinator in Madison County. And I'm going to give you a little background about myself because it's relevant to the strategy that we ended up using for our textile collection. I have been recycling coordinator here for the past 4 years. Prior to that, I was the director of a volunteer program here in Madison County, and I did that for 4 years. And prior to that, I worked as the training coordinator for literacy volunteers in New York State for 10 years. So I had a lot of contacts with different people in the local community and then a lot of the libraries around in the area, which I was able to utilize. Madison County is a very rural county, so we don't have the big Galleria malls or the, Sabres or anything like that. We have a population of 72,000. We're smack dab in the middle of the state, very rural, right in between Syracuse and Utica. So we have a lot of different little towns and villages. Our biggest metropolitan area, if you could call it that, is the city of Oneida, 10,000 people. All the other little towns are very small. So what we decided to do is an Earth Day collection of textiles. Each year on Earth Day we try to collect something different throughout, depending on what's going on in the state. The year before we did TVs and monitors, which you really don't have to do too much. They just bring them, but that's a different call. But anyways, then we did in 2014, we did the textiles. And so first we had to line up all the collection sites, and what I did was use a lot of existing contacts that I had, people I knew, the libraries, the cooperative extensions, other like-minded people. Think about if you're in a rural region, sometimes there's some different, like one of our sites was Nelson Farms, and they focus on locally grown commodities, so they were all about wanting to help with recycling, and they were having a workshop there for Earth Day, so they combined that with our textile collection, and they sent out with everyone who was coming to their workshop that we were collecting textiles that day as well, and that was, we got a lot at that one particular site. We ended up with 16 sites around the county in 11 different towns and villages. So, and as Susan said, it was a lot of work, making all these calls and setting up all the sites, and because each site had to have a large enough of a space to, collect a lot of to collect the bags. And then what we did was we went around and picked up with our roll-offs from the landfill here. And so then we had to have our landfill staff, go in and load it all and have a place to store it here until we could get Rescue Mission and, Salvation Army and some of the other places to come. And we kind of split it up between different for-profit and nonprofit textile entities. We did advertising. We have 4 local papers, so we did advertising in all the weeklies. We also, at that time, we don't have it anymore, but we did have a local radio station. So we advertised on the radio and then went on and talked about it as well. And then all these different sites, we had flyers and we sent it to them, and then they promoted it through their own contact lists locally, their own email list. They put up flyers around town, so everyone spread the word. most of the collections were just the one day on Earth Day. We also sent out an invitation to all the school districts in our town, and only 2 school districts took us up on it. Two high schools and 1 elementary school. The 2 high schools really didn't do so much. One took in like 76 pounds and the other one 38 pounds. But the elementary school was far and above they went above and beyond. It was a K-3 school, and they had the whole school participated. We went over there, and one whole hallway they had kind of set aside in the back was where they were keeping the textiles. They took in 2,030 pounds of textiles, and at the end of each day, they did it for the week. And so they set up a little classroom competition, and they got to certain ones could weigh it at the end of the day, and Mrs. Smith's class is winning, and then whatever class ended up winning got to have the recycling ranger, stuffed tiger, live in their classroom. So that went over great, and they did that all themselves. I really had nothing to do with that other than to invite them to participate. So sometimes you just hit on stuff that works great. At the end of the day, we ended up with 6.4 ton of textiles. And so we were very pleased with the event. We were able to increase our tonnage from the year before, almost 50%. So we almost doubled the amount that we normally take in. So I guess that's my story. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate you telling that. That was very helpful for everyone.
Yep.
All right. So now, since that, I'm going to go through a couple of the outreach materials that we have on the Re-Clothe New York website that you can use if you'd like to promote textile recycling more generally, or you can use them to promote your textile recycling events in your municipality or in your area. And I'd also like to remind everyone that you can feel free to send in questions for any of our speakers or for all of our speakers as I'm going through this. You can just use that Q&A box on the bottom right. So first, I'd encourage you all to visit the Re-Clothe New York website. You can see the link right there. That's where we are housing all the outreach resources that you can use. There's posters, flyers, media alerts, all sorts of templates and samples that you can use to get the word out. I'm going to go through just a couple of the examples. So we do have these posters and flyers. They look like this. There's an environmental one and an economic one, depending on what you'd like to get out there. These are available for download on the website. If you'd like, we can also print them and send them to you for free to save you on printing costs. If you'd like that, please feel free to email me. My email is at the bottom there, and we can get those over to you as soon as possible. We also have these social media posts. We put these graphics together. You can download them on that website, or you can download them from the website and put them up on your social media accounts. There's also a document on the Outreach Toolkit that has some sample social media posts with text that you can easily copy and paste into your Facebook and Twitter accounts. It can be a really nice time saver for you if you're putting up posts on social media. We have some other resources on there, depending on what you'd like to do. We have a fact sheet, which you can see on the left, that contains some key facts that you can promote when promoting textile recycling. We also have a PowerPoint presentation. If you're speaking at any conferences or events or meetings in your town or municipality, you can feel free to use that PowerPoint presentation or adapt it to your needs. There's also a marketing calendar, which has some key dates that would be great for promoting textile recycling. For instance, Halloween's coming up, and a lot of people will be going to thrift stores to find their costumes, but they can also donate their clothing while they're there. It's a great message to get out there. And lastly, we have this whole media toolkit, which contains sample letters to the editor, template media alerts and advisories that you can send to your local media, the radio stations and TV stations and newspapers that Susan and Mary both recommended using. You can fill these in with your information, and you can send them off to them easy and quick. Local media tends to be a really good way to get the word out there about your events, as a lot of you probably know. So now I'd like to open it up to questions, if anyone has any. I'm going to quickly unmute our speakers. All right, so you're all unmuted now. We do have one question from Sergey, which is, does anyone have an experience of running a continual textile recycling event, a year-long one?
Well, we did in Buffalo, or excuse me, in Western New York, we did do at the malls. We were allowed to put our boxes at the mall, and they stayed at the service center for the entire, like for a permanent thing. Mm-hmm. I would say that that didn't really drive material there because we weren't there, we weren't promoting it. The boxes were there themselves, so I think that that was one that. It wasn't one of our best ones, that's all I'll say.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I could add, in Madison County, we don't, it's not like a year-long event, but we collect textiles curbside for any of our residents who have a hauler. So they can put any textiles that they want to recycle in a clear plastic bag and put it in with their papers. And then when it comes to our recycling center, we have dual stream. So we can pick that out. And then we have a partnership with the Salvation Army, and we pull those. And then it goes right into the Salvation Army bin. They come every Wednesday and pick up. We also have 3 transfer stations, and we have a Salvation Army bin right next to the paper recycling area at the transfer stations. So residents can bring their textiles there as well.
Great, awesome. Yeah, that's a good resource to know about. So I think we might have connected to Gary, so I'm just going to try and unmute him and see if we can get him on. One moment. Gary, are you with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Great.
Oh, great.
Awesome. Glad to have you here. Are there any tips and tricks that you would like to add and any experiences you'd like to share on the call?
Well, I just wanted to follow up a little bit with what Susan had talked about. I mean, she did a tremendous job telling you about the experience that we had. I mean, and a couple things. I think it's really important. The reason Susan was able to take such a lead on this is because her mayor really got behind this work and really promoted that and allowed her to take it and run. And the county was very happy to participate, but really was the mayor. I do think a little bit of our successes, the events Susan talks about, ones that did work and ones that didn't. We did some radio advertising. The first America Recycles Day event, we did radio advertising. The second one, we did TV advertising, which of course you don't get as much as when you do radio. So that may have been part of it too. So we were also at less places, as Susan mentioned. We sort of spread out, and maybe with the advertising, it was just there was too much going on there. So that might have been it. And then the other big thing that we found, and Susan, I think you would agree with this, that where we wanted to really promote bringing your I can't remember your rags and your anything for recycling, and as long as it wasn't dirty or oily. But I would say our partners in this, they weren't quite as, they were happy to take the stuff, but they did not want us to push that as part of our promotion. And as recycling coordinators, we were very excited about that. So that was probably the only real difference that we between us and the group.
Got it.
So
Thank you.
Those were just the two things I wanted to add to Susan's presentation.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, to kind of go off of one of those points, I know that, Susan and Gary, you mentioned radio and TV, and I believe, Mary, you mentioned weekly ads. I'm wondering what the most effective or where you got the most bang for your buck in terms of outreach strategies for getting the word out to your residents. What worked the best for you, and what did you maybe try that didn't necessarily work so well? Susan, maybe I'll start with you.
Well, the radio ads, for some reason, really worked for that one event. And they, as like Gary said, they play them a lot. But, when we do any other event, it tends to be more the television ads that do it. But for some reason, this was on it. It was a good ad, I think, that came out, and it really did. But either that or the TV. I mean, those are two that really gets people going. Also, social media with our partner groups. So we really having that hashtag form that we all could each advertise on our own page, as well as our partners like Go Bike, which is very popular here, and the Buffalo Sabres. So that was another way, the social media aspect. But I would say definitely radio first, TV, and social media.
And the malls also used social media, and I think that helped as well.
Yeah, good point.
And here in rural Madison County, we still rely a lot on email lists, and a lot of the different libraries and some of the other sites that we have an email listserv, and that was the most successful for this area. People just put it on their email list, and it's kind of like Facebook in a way. Then they kept posting the flyer and reminding people and spreading the word that way.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Off of that, I know that, Susan, you mentioned the Sabres as being a good partner, and there's some other partners you all have mentioned. What are some really effective partnerships that you formed? I know, Mary, you mentioned schools, too. What other partnerships would you recommend people use to really get the word out there and to make these events most effective?
Well, we have a network of, other than what I've mentioned, the relationships and the partnerships that we formed. We have a coalition of block clubs here in the city, and they're always a good group to tie into. They do have an extensive email list, like Mary said, and we use that too. I mean, and they volunteer at the events as well, so that also helps. So I would say, and I think in any other place they call it like a community group. I'd say that was a good partnership. I'm trying to think of any other ones. In the schools, too, we did have that thing with the school, but that was hit or miss for us, the public schools.
And out here, the strongest, like, community groups are the libraries. They're the community centers in all the different little towns. And even when a library didn't have space to, be able to host the collection, they still were very happy to promote it. So that's another really good resource in almost any area, I think.
Yeah, and we found that libraries were very happy to promote it, but when the one time that we did use multiple libraries, we did not, for the actual drop-off, we didn't collect that much material. But as Susan said, we also look at this as, the ability to get the message out there too. And especially like when we were regularly at a mall, we would let people say, "Oh, I didn't bring my stuff with me." Hand them the list, say, take it to any one of these groups. They all participate, so that allowed us to not necessarily get the tonnage, but at least we got the word out there, and hopefully that translated.
Yeah, on a related note, Kathy O'Connor just asked us a question. Where did I see a list of drop-off bins across New York State? Kathy, there is one on the Re-Clothe New York website, so I'll send a link to that to the group right now so you can see that at your leisure. So I also wanted to ask Andrew, are there any partnerships that you would recommend? I know you've done this before.
A quick response to that. We did do a collection event last year where we actually had, we too had two different organizations partner together, Salvation Army and Rescue Mission, collecting at the same time. And we actually leveraged that as part of our messaging and outreach to say this is the first time these two organizations have ever combined forces to collect materials. So while it might seem as no big deal to, I guess, maybe some of those of us on the call handling the logistics of all this, we try to leverage that as kind of part of a hook with the media to get the word out about this. So that I think that having multiple partners in itself can be somewhat of a promotional tool. And then I had a quick question for Susan or Gary about the $5 coupon, which I think is a pretty unique tool and element of all this, and wondering how they put that together, how they secured the support of the retailers to provide that $5 coupon.
Well, they were all I think it was, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was Salvation Army's idea, and you know, we had a meeting and they all agreed to honor the coupon, so we printed a limited amount on the of the coupons for the event, and it was good for 1 month. And then we just handed them out, and they were they were homemade. I mean, not homemade, but you know what I mean. They were designed in somebody's office, and then we gave them out, and I think some came back, but not a lot. I think we gave out, what was it, Gary? Like we gave out 200, I think.
That sounds about right, yeah.
About 200, and I think we got about 25 back.
But again, it was the retail stores of our partners, not other, you know, so
It was a
Goodwill
coalition
store
member,
or Salvation Army store.
So maybe that's just food for thought for some of us on the call in terms of collections at retail locations or malls or strip malls, is the ability to maybe collaborate with the retailers there to try to establish a little bit of a working relationship and provide that the $5 coupon to actually some of those retailers to see if that's something that they would potentially be interested in. That would be kind of a new wrinkle for us. And because I think many of us on the call know how powerful that economic incentive is just for that 5-cent deposit on that bottle or can, the nickel deposit. So certainly I think that $5 coupon to you know, a retailer might be a really powerful incentive to get people to donate clothes.
When we were at the couple of events at the Galleria Mall has a coupon book that they did allow us to give out when people made a donation, and some people most definitely came for that. Would have forgotten we did that.
Good one. I forgot about that one, Gary. Yeah.
And yeah, people definitely asked, because at first the mall hadn't delivered the coupon books, and we're like, we're getting them. So I mean, that definitely drove people.
It's a great idea. Well,
Susie, I have to say, I have to sign off. They're locking the gate here. I don't want to be locked in.
No problem. I'm just about to close it up. So thank you very much, Mary.
Okay. Nice talking with everyone.
You too.
Bye.
All right, well, on that note, we're at the top of the hour, so I'd like to close us out today. I'd like to thank all of our speakers for coming on, Amanda Nicholson, Dan Rain, Susan Attridge, Mary Bartlett, Gary Carroll, and Andrew Radin is also on the call. Thank you all for speaking today and offering your tips and tricks. I'd also like to thank all of our participants on the call today and encourage you to run textile recycling events this fall on America Recycles Day in the future. And if you have any questions, please visit the Re-Clothe New York website. Feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to be connected to any of our speakers. I'd be happy to connect you. If you have any questions about the outreach materials, I'm happy to answer them. And we look forward to working with you all to increase textiles recycling in New York. So thank you all very much for participating, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for putting this on.
Sure. Thanks.